Welcome, everyone, to What to Do About, the podcast, which is about what to do about. This episode is focused on what to do about racism. And let me introduce my good friend and colleague.
Oh, I'm Peter Holbrook, and this is the 15th man on the moon.
15th man on the moon?
Well, not quite. You've done so many other things. Lord Victor Adebowale.
Victor will do nicely.
Yeah. And we are looking at racism, and, you know, I'm very aware of my own white male privilege in this conversation, but will do my best to continue in my progression and my engagement as an ally and as an anti-racist.
I think so, but we'll talk about you.
Yeah, with me.
But I want to I'm definitely going to talk about you.
Yeah,
actually.
okay.
But I want to introduce my good friend and colleague of many, many years. Some of you may well know him. He's been an activist, a thinker, a writer on issues of social policy and racism for many years. Let me introduce the wonderful Patrick Vernon.
Professor
Patrick Vernon
OBE.
OBE.
Well, thanks for inviting me on your podcast. Actually,
no,
and you look like you're in nice, comfy seats as well.
Yeah, we've given you the hard seat.
I can see that
because it's our podcast.
Hard questions.
We also didn't want you to blend too much into this red sofa.
Right. Okay.
That's true. That's true. We're going to talk about racism, and this is something that me and you have both experienced and have talked about for a long time.
Yeah, we have.
So I want to start with a question, which is it getting worse or is it getting better? And I don't, in the context of this country, I don't want to, because we could talk about the world, we could be here all day, but just like, what do you think? We both.
It's interesting because
60s,
I've been asked that question quite a few times over the last 12 months by fellow activists, campaigners, people working in the field of EDI, young people want to know, they want to understand racism here, but what was it like 10, 20, 30 years ago? Yeah. So this question, and the only answer I can give you is things happen. So I mean, as you know, Victor, I'm passionate about history. I've done a lot of research work.
You're a fellow of the History Society, I think, aren't you?
Of the Historical Society, and I've written articles, books, and contributed to various TV programs. And so the way I see history, racism or tackling anti-racism is like a long arc, and things go in cycles. So if we were having this conversation 5 years ago, we still may have had the same response, but 5 years ago, after the murder of George Floyd, the emergence of Black Lives Matter, everyone pledging their allegiance to fight racism and all forms of discrimination. Everyone thought, well, is this going to be a real change? Yeah. Is there a moment of epiphany in this country where people got it? They've smelled the coffee.
I never thought that. I've got to be honest.
I know you didn't. But a number of people were. Well, we've been here before. And then if you go back to the last moment of epiphany, was the murder of Stephen Lawrence. Yeah. Again, same thing. And if you go back again to the last moment of epiphany,
Obama.
Yeah, but that was more in the US context. But I can remember
it didn't have an impact here.
It did have an impact here. I remember Trevor Phillips writing an article. I think it was then at the CRE. I don't know. I remember reading this article. He said that it would never happen in Britain.
Yes. Yeah, well, he kind of did. Yeah.
So every 20, 30 years, we have these schisms of guilt, angst, moral outrage. I mean, in terms of the context of people of colour, we still fight the good fight. But in terms of the wider public, that's what happens. They see the issues for a moment. So I'm into sci-fi and stuff like that.
I know. I remember repeating on your podcast.
Yeah, you're on podcast. Yeah. And it's almost like it's almost like if we don't get through, if you don't, the black hole's closing. If you don't get your ship through the black hole, you can't get through the other side of the universe.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I see it. We have to wait. So we have to wait for the hole to open again.
Oh, I see.
And you know what I mean?
I mean, I do, in the sense that it's interesting that you talk. We have to wait for the for the hole to open again
Yeah.
before we can push the sort of anti-racism ship through and get to the other side. I mean, I want to put it to you that in the 70s, I remember the BNP marching in Wakefield and in the North Yorkshire. And I remember I was talking to my sister about it, as having to shut the doors and pull the windows, the blinds closed, because we didn't want them to see that there were black people in this house as they were marching past.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, that was bad, right? And, and walking down the street, you were at reasonable risk of being attacked, actually. And certainly in London you were. And in fact, there were some deaths as a direct result. Are we back there?
It's different. So, I mean, I grew up in Wolverhampton, so just like in the Midlands and Yorkshire. Obviously, there were similar situations in London, like Hoxton, Lewisham. But essentially, the National Front were very active outside London, very, very active outside. So they were very active in the West Midlands, in Birmingham, in Wolverhampton, where I grew up. And they used to have because there was a large Black and Asian population in Wolverhampton, they would deliberately go through our areas. So they got a beating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when they got a beating, then they came back.
Yeah.
So they never would, and so that's part that. And so this, okay, we recognize that, okay, if we go into this black area, we may not survive.
Yeah.
So let's focus on march for the town centre, which they did do. But it was, when we talk about the expression hostile environment policy or hostile environment, which is obviously codified in law around immigration. But there was a hostile environment policy because, that made the time when your parents arrived to the UK, like sometimes my parents, they had the no dogs, no blacks, no Irish scenario. An Irish friend of mine said to me, "How come it's always Irish at the bottom?" I don't know. I didn't invent the slogan. So it's the fascist and racist. You know what I mean?
But I'm thinking, I'm thinking in the 70s and 80s, there was a confident racist cadre, BNP, NF on the streets.
Yes.
There was a sense that there were a fringe, an active fringe, that we face daily, but there was a sense that the press and the institutions knew they were a racist, and that it wasn't kind of acceptable. But on the edges of some of it, I mean, I remember being called all kinds of names by policemen, and I remember being all that sort of stuff.
Yes,
but it was seen as a fringe issue. It wasn't seen as reasonable on the news. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were things like the black and white minstrel show. There was Love Thy Neighbour. There was, but it wasn't seen as a serious political force. Right now, you don't get. Well, I was going to say you don't get them on the streets, but of course you've got Tommy Robinson and the like. But now, what I see is racist discourse regularly being accepted on mainstream radio shows, mainstream newspapers, mainstream television, current affairs news, and it's not separate from discourse about health or politics or fashion even. It's just embedded. It's it's embedded. So you have to pick it out.
Yes.
So for instance, people talking about identity politics. It's kind of code for people who want to talk about racism. But it's kind of seen as acceptable to talk about it. It's now acceptable, partly because immigration's plummeting, to talk about repatriation. In fact, we had a senior ex-politician saying, well, we should talk about it, but I personally think it's a bit too far. And I'm thinking, you think it's a bit too far? Almost. I just wonder whether it has got worse. Actually, whether it's worse in a funny kind of way.
I think it's
now
more
acceptable.
I think it's more pervasive. You can't write. It's more pervasive. So in the 70s and 80s, even though it felt like it was isolated through marches and kind of hate crime and stuff like that. And don't forget, there's been a long history of this anyway. You have to go back to Oswald Mosley and the black shirts in the 1930s. We're not that far away from Cable Street, where the battle took place, back in the 30s. Then you obviously the likes of Enoch Powell, who was MP when I was growing up in Wolverhampton, and his speech of Rivers of Blood. And the thing about that speech of Rivers of Blood, people don't appreciate how powerful that
It was
speech is.
massive.
If you do a Google search,
was
that
massive.
speech is on far-right websites.
Yeah. It was massive.
A lot of people take homage to that speech, and that has influenced, I would say, at least 3 generations of politicians.
Oh, I'm sure of
You know
it,
what I mean?
including this one,
Yeah.
including our Prime Minister, in fact, at one point, although he did say he apologised, he didn't know what he was reading, which is even more worrying. But
So I don't think it was. So it felt like it was an isolated situation, but actually, what's happened is we've just taken off the bonnet.
Okay.
We've just looked under the bonnet. It's always been there,
okay.
but we've just opened the bonnet,
Yeah.
and it's just exposed. But the difference now is social media. That's why it's more pervasive, because now everyone can tweet, send social media messages. You could be anonymous, and you can say all kind of stuff. You can
hate gets clicks.
and precisely you can gaslight people without any retribution. I think the difference between the 70s and 80s and now, and we might have a different opinion on this.
No, I'm curious.
Is at least there was a CRE. The CRE enforced. There were the enforcers.
Yes.
So very similar.
There were boundaries.
And very similar to the Equal Opportunities Commission.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if they saw a private company, a public body breaching race equality legislation, they would slap an order, they would take them to court, they'll get fined, they'll be named, shamed, pillared, etc. We don't have that now.
I want to ask you something because people watching this or listening to this might not understand what racism is.
Yeah.
And I just think we should start with a definition. Like,
what?
No, it's really.
How long is this podcast, by the way?
Well, we got 6 months. No. I'm just.
You can come back next week.
I just think we should start with a because the title is "What to Do About," and I'd really like to get to a sense of what you think we should do about it.
Yeah.
But let's define it first. What do we mean when we talk about racism?
Oh, there are so many academic, political definitions, analysis on racism, and it depends on your politics as well.
Okay. What
So
do you mean?
your favourite?
What do you mean?
I've got a favourite. I mean, as I reflect on, it's not so much about the definition of racism. I think it's about the manifestation of racism. So for me, if you look at the history, how the genealogy of racism, if you would call it that, it's always been, racism has always been there from civilization. We all know that. You know what I mean? Greeks, Romans, etc., all that kind of stuff. But the modern form of racism that we experience today in Britain, 2026, it's linked to the history of enslavement, the slave trade, because you had that. You had it happened ironically during the Enlightenment period, and you had all these great philosophers talking about this is humanity, this is how to be a human being. Etc. But black people and people of colour, you're not human, you're subhuman. And that context of bit of subhumanality is reflected every day around healthcare, housing, education, politics, represents. It's still there. So, but the manifestation of that, we call it structural racism, institutional racism. It's just the same facet of that historical genealogy of how.
I agree with you. I mean, in the sense that the race and many, if you talk to many scientists and certainly biologists, they will tell you that race is not really real. Right? It's not a real thing. It's a societal construct. And then you look back and you look at slavery, and you realise that it was the best bit of marketing for slavers there's ever been. Because in order to construct a world in which you could be brutal to other humans, you had to dehumanise them. In order to do that, you had to invent a story that said these people were less than human, and then you had to produce a load of pseudoscience to support it. You know, lots of stuff now which has been completely debunked, although some of it was only recently debunked in terms of science. But so racism is, from your perspective, is a historical, as a history.
Yeah.
But would you also say, and I would say this, I'm just throwing this out,
Sure,
that it's also a set of beliefs, i.e. a belief in an inferiority based on racial characteristics or or characteristics
Yeah.
that are associated with race or culture or ethnicity.
I agree with you, and there's different sources of how that came about. So if you look at Christianity, modern Christianity, if you look at the Bible, it talks about the curse of Ham. So the curse of Ham is basically it's used by certain evangelists and missionaries to say, "Oh, you've been cursed. God's cursed you as black people, so therefore we have to look after you or keep an eye on you." No, I'm not joking, and that's still quite there. Secondly, I mentioned about the Enlightenment period, about the highest form of black people had no civilizations, so therefore we have to teach you and learn you. And then obviously, then you had the whole stuff around Darwinism theory around fear of evolution. That black people still bottom the evolutionary chain. So all these different theories and other stuff in between, and the high point of that obviously was during the time of the 1920s and 30s, when you had the rise of the eugenics movement. And that further that created that scientific analysis to bring all these things together.
So we have a deep historical belief supported by pseudoscience that goes back many years, and that people have been taught, absorbed, and then taken in as a rationale for the abuse of power and the creation of economic advantage through slavery, and it still exists to this day. And I just wanted to be, I think we'd agreed that it has an historical, it has a social, and it has a kind of belief definition supported by, interpretations of religion, pseudoscience, because it is pseudoscience, and I suppose you could argue political advantage or power.
Of course, you could about social status, class, etc. as well.
And it's much easier to generate fear than it is to generate hope.
Well, yes.
Even though we pay our politicians to generate hope, a lot of them choose to generate fear. Okay, so I just wanted to be clear about that. Because I think I'd like us to get to an idea of what the hell do we do about it. So it's around, isn't it? Now I'm going to talk to the white guy on.
Hi. It's nice to be a token white.
No, because I wanted to say something. When we talk about racism, I just want your view on this. The racists I have met, and I have met many, tend to share a number of other ists. So, or icks. They tend to be homophobic. They tend to be misogynist. And they tend to be all three. And I wanted to sort of, because in my work on race, and I suspect in yours as well, often it's assumed that we're not talking about homophobia or misogyny. While I'm at pains to say, of course I am talking about those two things as well, because last time I looked, and disability, because last time I looked, black people were all of those things. And so I wanted to sort of have that conversation as well, because I think it's all racism, really.
I think in terms of, and you have to remember, the concept of intersectionality came from the struggles of black women. So that's where it came from. It didn't come from Hampstead or Hebden Bridge, where people sat down, and it came from the struggles of black women in America, talking about the double discrimination that they face as women and as black women as well. And if you look at the history of Stonewall in New York, there were a number of gay and trans black people that were involved in Stonewall.
Very much so.
So,
you don't hear about it much.
But they were involved. So the concept and notions of intersectionality, inclusion has come from a black experience. It's not come from academic analysis
it's real.
Of white professors and professionals.
It's
come from our lived experiences. So when we talk about it, but we're still seeing, you're a one-trick pony, you're just talking about race. No. But when you speak to an LGBT person or a black male, a black woman, a black disabled person, we are talking about our lived experiences. Through those different lenses.
I just think it's interesting.
But it's not valued and recognised.
I just think it's interesting that you rarely hear about it in these conversations. It's assumed. I mean, I was at a conference recently where there were three women who got up to talk about female leadership, and all three were white. And I spoke to them after and said, "Which women were you talking about?" Because I don't know that you were talking about my sisters. In fact, they weren't. And similarly, I don't know that it's clear that we're talking about LGBTQ plus sisters and brothers, because if we're not, then we're not talking about racism. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I accept that. And I think, although experience is very, very different, there is some common shared experience of being an outsider and being, kind of that discrimination. We've talked about it before, weathering you almost on a daily basis. You can identify kind of big events that have happened that are particularly kind of peak, but actually it's that slow, grudging kind of like weathering, that suppression of opportunity or respect or inclusion that just manifests and actually becomes much more visible as a gay man, like over the course of my life. You start to see it much more than you're even aware of when and I think there are significant differences. My question to you actually was, you talked about social media kind of amplifying and making this more visible potentially. But how far do you go with that? Do you subscribe to the notion that actually it's not just amplifying, it's actually designed to kind of multiply division as part of a necessary part of the kind of capitalist system to maintain power and control within elites, for example?
It feels that way. It does definitely feel that way.
Right now it does.
I'm not sure that was the original intention of the original designers of the World Wide Web.
I don't know any black owners of massive social media companies. Do you? Any female owners, especially?
Not in terms of social media. I mean, in terms of old media, there is, but they tend to be more in America. But they've been bought out by the big conglomerates anyway. But I think going back to your point, I think so. Amnesty International, you probably know about this. They did a survey about 6-7 years ago, and they found that Diane Abbott was the most hated person online. And then there've been other reports done by a whole range of Click and other organisations, which highlighted what you talked about, Victor, that people who are online are racist, sexist, and misogynists, and they hide in anonymity and spurting all this stuff and have lots of people following that stuff, and then it causes harm. So people are leaving the traditional forms of social media, and certain media owners are reinforcing that. As you know, they're actually encouraging that.
They are.
But is it an unintended consequence of the platforms, or is there some intentionality?
Yeah, I mean, I see social media as a new front line. So when we were growing up, I don't know if did you have a front line in Wakefield?
Not really, no. Well, everything was the front line. We didn't have a Waitrose. No, we had a Morrison. But I'm not sure we had a Morrison's. I remember Tesco being quite excited.
So,
but no.
So growing up in Wolverhampton, we had a mini front line, and then when I studied in Manchester, I lived in Moss Side, so that was a proper front line. And obviously, you had front lines in all in London and Leeds, everywhere. So in the front line is where particularly young people, young youth, congregate, share music, food, all kinds of stuff. And then on the other side of the front line, you have the police who are surveillance, watching, and when they feel there's a time, they will arrest you for no cause at all, or they think, well, if there's something happened in this area, it's got to be those youth on the front line. So the new front line, those front lines are now gentrified. Yeah, actually, they are. All the front lines are gentrified.
It's one of the things I noticed.
Seriously,
Notting Hill. I remember. I think it might have been Lenny Henry who pointed out. When he was asked about, he said it's a brilliant film, just one problem. And he said Notting Hill, and he said, well, what's the problem? I think it was the writer Richard Curtis, who said to him, what's wrong with the film? And Lenny Henry went, there's no black people in it. You made the film in Notting Hill. There's no black people.
No, there was a clip of a postman, I think, or something like that.
Off.
You saw the hand.
Get him off.
So the front lines that we know about, which some of them led to various disturbances and uprisings, don't exist anymore. They've been gentrified. And it costs and people are buying to live on the front line. Yeah, they are. This is the irony of it. Well, So the new front line now is online. It's a new front line, but this front line is not simply about policing. It's anyone who will have the opportunity to express whatever they want to express without any without them being arrested, unless there's clear evidence around stalking or clear evidence. I mean, there have been some cases, but essentially it's like the wild west, basically. It's not like people, back in the day when people were going to California looking for their fortune,
looking for the gold rush.
looking for gold and stuff like that, you know what I mean?
So is it more sophisticated now and less overt, perhaps? Is it more hiding in plain view, do you think, in terms of built into algorithms and the way in which, or do you think it's...
Well, I think Victor said that. I think that the AI and algorithms... So
how else could you explain it?
So this is the danger of the new technology. The new technology is using old Western colonialist thinking.
It's just concentrated it.
Yeah, but
But I mean, so we have a number of things that we're talking about. We're talking about what we call intersectionality, but the connection between racism and other isms and phobics. We're saying there's a connection, although I would say that on both sides of the LGBTQ debate, I know that there are black people who are homophobic, absolutely homophobic, and there are gay people who are absolutely racist. And also, when we talk about black people, me and you are seen as black, right? Although actually we're a chocolatey shade of brown. And I want to clear this up that black is a political term. It's not necessarily describing skin color, because actually we're all shades of brown. Actually, everybody is. But I just wanted to be clear about that, because again, I'm aware that some Indian, Pakistani and Asian people do not see themselves as black. They don't see themselves. And I often wonder about...
It's an interesting one because...
I've had some very interesting debates.
It's an interesting one because obviously if you looked at the time when the expression... So if you look at the history of the Black Panthers, the Black Panthers in America was very clearly African-American, essentially. When the Black Panther Party was established in the late 60s in the UK, there were about 3 or 4 different Black Panther parties, but the main ones were inclusive. So if you were of Southeast Asian heritage and you identify yourself as black. So that's where the expression politically black came from, how we established the Black Panthers in the UK. And then that was further developed in the 80s, etc. And then by the time we reached the 1990s, a lot of Southeast Asian people didn't want to be associated with black because there was a massive increase in the middle class. They were doing very nicely. Thank you very much. We don't need to be associated with poverty,
with those urban types.
And so and that was further reinforced politically in terms of politicians as well. I can think of Keith Vance because when he was deliberately working towards creating this, even though he ironically he saw himself as politically black in 1987, but by the 1990s, 2000s, he was clearly talking about distinctively about the Southeast Asian community as a community. But we've still, the black people are still there. We're still struggling. We're still there. But obviously, if you were to look at it from an international global perspective, then obviously people say, no, you're African. You're African heritage.
Majority.
Yeah, well, precisely.
Literally the global majority.
So I think for the people who have the passion of those Helicon days of the 60s and 70s, of see that politically black is important, the world's moved on one level. Because everyone is now trying to find, I do a lot of stuff around family history and genealogy, and everyone's trying to find their roots. Everyone's trying to find their connections and nation states and cultural connections, as well as being British at the same time.
Can I ask whether people originating from Africa, from the Caribbean, from that have traditionally darker skins, is the heat off them a little bit as we've seen kind of Christian nationalism advance and, put all their firepower towards the Islamic community? Is the kind of heat off a little bit? Or have you noticed any difference in terms of your research, in terms of the experience and how that manifestation of Christian nationalism that we're now seeing coming over from the US is impacting on the experience of racism amongst different communities in the UK?
It's always been there, to be quite honest. Maybe there's more of a focus on that. I mean, if you go to the LGBT experience, what's quite clear is, remember, laws. There were colonial laws that banned same-sex relationships, marriage, etc. So these were colonial laws, but what's happened now is a number of African countries are creating their own laws to ramp that up even further. So to me, that's quite a worrying trend. I mean, it's like that's in the Caribbean, but the Caribbean is a bit more relaxed, a little bit more relaxed now. But definitely in Africa, you've got a number of countries are now passing new legislation outlawing and making it a criminal offence, as it was in the UK back in the 50s and 60s.
I mean,
so to me,
is that just picking up the playbook that they've learned from Western leaders about how you occupy through division or maintain your power through division, or is that because there's a rabid kind of homophobia that's now being?
We have to recognise. I'm not. We have to recognise that people will use the Bible or the Quran and how they see that. That's part of the challenge, and that's part of the problem, that when people use religion to justify we're passing this law, or this is going to affect the morality of our country, therefore we have to pass this law, or it's not, but actually if you look at the history of sexuality in the world, and particularly in Africa, it's always been there. It's always been there, but people, so this is the contradiction.
I worry about a hierarchy of oppression. I worry about Afrophobia, Islamophobia, homophobia, the phobias, in a sense, being disaggregated into different kind of races, colours, and they're all arguing. And I've been in rooms where people have said, Islamophobia, what about Afrophobia? What about this? And I think, actually, and this is going to sound like a hippie, and I've got a guitar somewhere in it, but there's only one race that I really belong to, and that's the human race. And I wonder whether and I'm moving into the what to do about, I wonder whether there's something about just bringing back aggressive human rights. Like
we say aggressive,
for all,
we
in the
mean by
sense
aggressive.
it's not really about whether there's Afrophobia, or I'm not saying those things don't exist. But in the absence of a sort of an aggressive, assertive human rights framework,
is equal.
Everybody
can have these rights.
Can have
There's a competition, isn't there, for
it's like almost
visibility, for campaigns, for winning progress.
And I don't want, and I'm really careful when I'm saying this, and I'm really careful about it because it's easy to slide into the other racist trope, which is this is all about identity politics.
I think Tony Sewell's interviewed about that over in Telegraph.
Yes, and you go, these people, identity politics. So these people who go, well, I'm not bothered about identity politics, and you go, okay, so explain to me why black women are 5 times more likely to die in childbirth, why we're 48 times more likely to be stopped and searched, and then talk to me about. I mean, it's nonsense. It is nonsense. And I think Tony Sewell's got a lot to answer for, to be honest. But I it's a convenient argument that puts the whole thing under the carpet. But there's a version of that, of this whole debate, which I'm just putting to you, is about human rights. It's about human rights for everyone.
You're absolutely correct. It's human rights for everyone, but more for other people than others. That's part of the problem.
But what do you mean by that? Tell me what you mean.
So if you look at, of course, there's but how you interpret human rights legislation and policy, that's part of the problem.
But that's because it's not assertive enough.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to challenge you on that. We've got
please.
if you look at the current statutes that we have at this present moment in time, it may change in the years to come. If you look at the current legislation that we have around all aspects of intersectionality, which most of it's been codified in the equality legislation, we've got the best legislation in the world around fighting all forms of racism. We have on the statute books. I use the word the statute books. The problem that we have,
nobody's reading them.
Nobody's not reading them or ignoring them. And we're not being enforced. That's the problem that we have.
But that's what I mean when I talk about an assertive.
But isn't that partly because we're resting on legislation to enforce and regulate people's behaviour rather than starting an education, like teaching the true origins of
absolutely. And so if you look at the public sector equality duty, it's got two aspects. There's the duty to which then leads to policy, all that kind of stuff. But the other aspect of public sector quality duty is to educate and inform.
That's right.
And we have spent hardly any money and resources.
That would take money away.
For the last 30
years,
that.
I would have thought.
When the CRE was around, that's why I'm going back to CRE. The CRE had public campaigns. You may have not agreed with them, but they had public campaigns. I can remember the one poster. Do you remember the poster of the brains? You know,
yes, I do remember. That's no colour.
Stuff like on the babies. So they deliberately had social campaigns to educate and inform.
Can you imagine
they produce
them doing
handbooks
that now?
and information. We don't do that anymore. We don't do.
So I want to come back. I want to keep going on this, because I would argue the CRE and those campaigns were a branch of activist human rights. I'm talking about asserting human rights such that people were reminded of their rights, but also reminded of their responsibilities under the law. You know, and it was asserted. You know, it was asserted. So people did get into trouble. There were partly because, and let's just talk about taxpayers. You know, I'm a taxpayer. You're a taxpayer. You're a taxpayer. It should be unacceptable that we do not get the same treatment as other taxpayers because of the colour of skin, our sexual orientation, or both, right? And therefore, there should be some assertive exposition that says you cannot treat people in any other way than as human beings with equal rights, equal opportunities, and equity. And that should be asserted. And it's not about saying don't be Afrophobic or don't be homophobic. It's saying these people have rights, you have duties. We're going to remind you of that of every opportunity. We're going to hold you to account for it. And if you're not doing it, we're going to take something away from you.
And promoting equality as a kind of a patriotic endeavour, right? I mean, this is meant to be the country of playing by the rules and cricket and all the rest of it. It feels as if at the moment patriotism and progressive politics are not currently part of the same conversation. It feels as if...
No, certainly not.
No, right? It feels as if
absolutely right.
Patriotism that was previously associated with the fight against fascism has morphed into being pretty fascist.
I find it astonishing, actually. I do find it literally astonishing that I can talk to people, and I have done, who fought in the Second World War, who never get an airing on the media, who are disgusted, and I use the word disgusted, by what they see coming out of the mouths of politicians who want to be Prime Minister. And I've talked to people who were in tears. These are elderly white people who went through the war and are feeling that same sense of, hang on a minute, there's something really, really nasty going on. And they can see it, and they're not talking to it, and they're not heard. And what you do hear are people who are frightened, saying they don't want any Muslims living next door. In those circumstances, I'm just reasserting the duty of public services, broadcasters, publishers, under the very statutes that you very soundly talked about, being held account.
But the problem is, if they're not being held account, how should they be held account when they don't even understand it themselves? So as a lawmaker in the House of Lords, how does Parliament hold?
Well, I think there's something. I'm with you. Like the education bit. One of the things that the law does. I mean, we're changing laws all the time, and you'll see. I mean, I was listening to the radio the other day. There was an advert about the changes to the Tenants and Landlords Act. And it was advertised. Right now, if you're a landlord, you need to prepare for these changes. And I remember when there was moves. The reason why those posters about the brains coming out, it was because it was to educate people about their duties under the law. Now, we don't do that anymore. All I suppose what I'm saying is, as we move this conversation to what we do about, I'm suggesting that one of the things we might do is actually assert the law, and in so doing, educate people that there are laws, and you can break laws. And now, in order to break the law and go to prison, you literally have to be a mob throwing Molotov cocktails
Yeah.
at a motel because you think there are asylum seekers in there, when in fact there are nurses in there, and you go to prison literally for trying to kill somebody, as opposed to being warned or being told and informed that you cannot go around swearing at people, discriminate against people before you get anywhere near the Molotov cocktail.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
So in many ways, what you're talking about is either a massive public education program at all levels,
and the assertion of the law.
And the assertion I agree with you, and I think we've lost that. We've lost that over the last 20 years, maybe even longer, and so therefore it's a free for all. Or people will interpret the law differently.
There are no routes out of, the common experience for most Black people who are born into lower economic opportunity, and social mobility is also worsening. Like, the ability to address that is much more complicated and difficult without social mobility. So my point would be, isn't there an issue to reactivate the interest in class? Because actually, what many people experience, whether you're white working class, whether you're gay working class, whether you're disabled working class, Black working class, is being contained within your part of society.
This is really interesting. I'm glad you said that, and I'm glad we got there, because I know there's a Marxist dialectic which would argue that there's no such thing as racism. It's all about class.
Yeah, all about class,
And I found... I'm not a member of the Labour Party, but I've often found that the Labour Party shied away from race because it fundamentally doesn't believe that's the issue, that the issue is class. And if we deal with the class problem and the economic problem, and as you say, the stay in your lane problem, then we would deal with racism because opportunity would be available for all.
No, I wouldn't quite say that. I think the Labour Party does acknowledge race and racism in the context of class, and some trade unions, but not all. But part of the problem is that there's the energy to make it work. So it's one
but
thing.
Isn't that because they don't really agree?
It's one thing. There's one thing acknowledging it, another thing what you're going to do about it. Yeah. But I'm going back to the point that you made is, I mean, I look at my family and other families I know, and it's not like everyone is working class and we're stuck. When I talk about social mobility, there are generations now, there are at least 3 generations of Black families who've been to university, got degrees, but they're still not getting the opportunities around around opportunities in their career development because of racism, destructive racism, networks, fiefdoms, old boy, old girl networks, all that kind of stuff, which reinforce the point that you're making about then you might have gone to university, you might have even gone to Oxbridge, but you still, but you can't get through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I think that for me underlines the fact that class alone isn't a sufficient lens with which to see racism. No. I think you have to see it in the way that we've discussed it alongside class. And I think class is a deeply problematic issue in this country. It's almost. I mean, we talk about the caste system in India, and it's not far off. I mean, it's not far off. But I think the racism issue, I often think that the class debate is partly because those on the left still feel uncomfortable talking about race.
Yeah,
it's quite convenient to raise the Marxist dialectic when
it's the left and the right, to be honest. Because
meet in the middle.
It's like, either you have a colourblind approach. Actually, both of them, left and right, use a colourblind approach. So if you're looking from a classical Marxist perspective, you have a colourblind approach.
Yes.
That we all, everyone, when the boat rises, we all rise together.
Yeah.
If you look at the right, it's a colourblind approach. If you make money, everyone's all right.
So it's a meritocracy. Yeah.
So it's the same. It's the same.
It is the same.
And that's why when you have these debates around affirmative action or positive, it's not even positive discrimination because it's not reflected in the law, but positive action. People automatically see it as positive discrimination, or there's outcry. Why are you giving favoritism? But I think the best example of positive action is looking at who runs this country.
Who really
that is
wants
positive.
something.
That is positive action because it's reinforcing the networks.
Yes.
The network,
Yes.
and
It's not
you know
a
what I mean?
meritocracy. Everybody knows
you know,
that.
and
Yeah.
we asked for a little piece of legislation, so we have a leg up. No, you can't have the legislation. We can't have quotas. We can't have this, but yet you have it. But it's built. It's inbuilt in the system.
So we're back. I don't know whether we're going to be on saying we're back, but anyway, we are back, and we're back with the wonderful Patrick Vernon, Professor Patrick Vernon, and we'll just I want to, in the last 15 minutes of this, talk about solutions. And I posited to you, having gone round the houses in terms of describing the complexity of it, return to a kind of fairly simple solution, actually, rather than increase the complexity.
Yeah.
Let's get back to assertive, aggressive human rights.
Yes.
Because in so doing, we exercise the law, we educate people about the
Yes.
law. If we don't, we forget we've got a law, and we allow people to abuse it, avoid it, and otherwise actually kill it, just get rid of it. And, you know, like that's some politicians are talking about.
Yeah.
People used to talk about, I remember going to political parties, and there'd be conferences, there'd be people with banners, you know, ban the CRE, you know, abolish the Race Relations Act and all that. And they haven't had to abolish it because it's not been applied.
Yeah.
People are getting away with stuff which is clearly illegal and clearly, you know, immoral and against the law, not just the spirit of law, the actual law.
Yes.
And we have denigrated human rights.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering whether one of the what to do abouts would be reassert human rights, resource them,
absolutely.
talk about them.
We should be investing more resources in being better human beings, not less. So if you look at the history again of the women having the right to vote in 1918, all the legislation in the 1960s around race, 70s around equal pay, gender equality, then Disability Discrimination Act, stuff around LGBTI in terms of, if you look at that whole history, each legislation had a regulator, a body. That job was to promote that legislation, to enforce the legislation,
and to educate.
to have conversations and dialogue,
Yes.
basically. And then eventually that got all merged into one body, which hasn't been, which half its resources has been taken away. It's been a political football.
Yeah.
It's been used as a political football.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, so it's almost virtually invisible.
Yeah.
Basically. But during the time of, I can remember, I used to work for Mind. I remember when the disability rights legislation was passed, and that was really important.
It was, yeah.
It's no different to when the CRE was established and what it was doing, and even the Equal Opportunities Commission around equal pay and gender equality. They created a sense of energy and a sense of actually, you know, things are progressing as a society, and people have forgotten that. They've forgotten that history, why we fought for that legislation in the first place. What people are talking about now is we've got too many rights.
Yeah. Too
Absolutely.
many rights.
But
I like that
we're not
idea.
even enforcing our rights.
Yeah.
So definitely education from school upwards. That's why the whole stuff around the curriculum and you know, the whole conversation around citizenship and identity and belonging, along with subject matters around history and geography and all that kind of stuff is part of that. It should be that bedrock. We should be creating good citizens.
In talking about assertive human rights, the debate becomes less about us, right?
Yeah.
And more about you.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes about the people who might be watching this and thinking, well, you know, I don't really matter. But actually, it's your rights too.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Because just because you're not the same colour as me or the same sexual orientation as you or maybe both, these rights apply to you, and you don't know when you're going to need them. And I think
that's more important. So when politicians talk about taking away rights, or we don't need to sign up to the various international conventions, they were there established in the first place. Most of these conventions came out of the Second World War because of fascism. And we have to remind people about that. So when people read the Sun or the Mirror or the Telegraph or even the Guardian, and they're thinking, well, yeah, that makes sense. We don't need it. People don't know the history. Actually, we're not informed enough as citizens about history. I've been involved. So I've been involved in this campaign, as you've probably seen. So we've had, me and Zahara, we've been having meetings with the Bank of England for the last 5 years, private meetings with them. We had a meeting with them a week before they made the announcement. They called us into their office.
Really?
I'm not joking. They called us into the office to explain, because they knew, because obviously they didn't want to make the announcement, and they probably were going to one, which we have anyway. But but we had this meeting. And they said, we had this public consultation. The public want flowers and animals based on this, because they had focus groups around the country and all that kind of stuff. And I said, what was the context?
What was the question?
What was the question? And what was the context? Did your focus group bring to attention there hasn't been a person of colour on any banknotes? Did you bring to attention of the focus groups that actually the Bank of England played a key role on the slave trade?
Yeah.
Not only
paying out until the 1980s, weren't they?
Not only financing it through the bonds and all that kind of stuff, but a number of the governors had plantations. And to make it worse, those governors even got compensation that we paid for. I paid for, my parents paid for.
In fact, it wasn't the 1980s. It
was 2015. 2015 when
we stopped 2015.
Yeah, so we've all paid.
Yeah.
And so they kept saying it's down to the public. And I said to them, it's very similar to when I did my campaign years ago, 100 Great Black Britons, when the BBC did 100 Great Britons. Not one black person or Asian person. No, that's not true. Freddie Mercury, he was the only person of colour. And then, so it's about, so these institutions, the Bank of England, the BBC, the NHS, whoever it is, have a responsibility to educate and inform. If we don't educate and inform, then we have misinformation. And misinformation, as we now know, could lead to violence.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm curious. I would love to have been. So what did they say then? I mean, what did they invite you in and just go, sorry, Patrick, but...
this is all too difficult. We're just going to choose some flowers.
We're going to do flowers. Is that... I mean, that's just incredible.
It's incredible, and I wasn't really happy about it, so that's why I've put stuff on social media. It's been picked up by the media itself. But obviously, the main conversation in the media has been they're taking away Winston Churchill. That's been the main conversation.
They're just about to take away the EHCR, which was one of his achievements.
Yes, he was.
It's probably timing that he's airbrushed off the notes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I find that...
So to me, representation still matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
It still matters.
It's part of education.
Representation of all forms still matters. That is, that's why I go, I'm sadly, I'm a Trekkie. I'm sorry, I love Starfleet Academy.
Wrong with that.
That's why I think,
the first interracial kiss on television?
What?
First interracial kiss on television was on Star Trek.
And you got LGBT Klingon, so more. Come on, what more do you want? You know what I mean? Come on. So this is the Federation for the second century. So we're going to kind of move forward. Come on.
I'm going to bring out, because I know you've got to go, and we've got to bring things to a close. And if we're going to have two what to do abouts, the first would be an assertive, aggressive re-representation of human rights with the education and support. And I think what you've said at the end about representation without apology of people of colour, regardless of their sexual orientation, their gender, people of colour, in these institutions is pretty important. And the fact that that's quite a shocking story, actually, because for the Bank of England to avoid.
But I think, as you know, the Bank of England, if they could focus on animals and flowers, that way they don't get involved in it. But actually, it's backfired, because now everyone's saying, "Where's Winston Churchill?"
So I think those 2 points are really, really important. But one thing that I've also observed is, over decades of progress for like LGBTQI plus progress, we've been winning legal rights. In some respects, representation. But the economics have all gone in the wrong direction, right? So if you have got all of those rights, you still need to access the resources to be able to.
You certainly do.
Legal aid's gone, right?
Yes.
So people's opportunity to actually pursue justice has really been stripped away, has it not?
I agree with you absolutely, because I'm involved in.
You're a lawyer, aren't you, by training? You're a lawyer, aren't you?
No, I studied law. I didn't practice.
No one admits that.
I'm involved. So I'm involved. I've been involved in lots of campaigns. I'm involved in the campaign that we're resurrecting in Wolverhampton, my hometown, murder of a young black man called Clinton McCurb in 1987, killed by the police in the next clothes shop. So we're trying to reopen that case. We're trying to do a blue plaque. And the other thing is about remembrance and history and culture, because you've got to have the narrative. If there's no narrative to explain why the importance of LGBT history. I mean, actually, if you look at history, if you look at the history of Black History Month, Black History Month was established in the UK in 1987. I know that you're not a big fan of it, Victor.
Me and you used to debate this.
Oh yeah,
but I just want to be clear. Just to be clear, look, I'm not against it in the sense that we shouldn't have it. I just think Black history is all year round.
No, I agree with you. And to be fair,
it's just history.
It is actually. But when it was established in the UK, started in America first, but started in the UK in 1987, then that inspired the creation of LGBT History Month in 2006, because I remember supporting that campaign. And then in 2018-19, there was launch of Southeast Asian History Month. And actually I was invited by the organisers as an event of Parliament to share the lessons of Black History Month, what the work, the good, bad, the ugly. Then you've got Gypsy Travel History Month. And I think now, and there's now was launched 3 years ago, on the back of what happened during the pandemic, where a lot of hate crime was targeted against Chinese and Southeast Asian communities. There's now Southeast Asian History Month.
But in a way that illustrates...
Asian History Month.
I know, but in a way that illustrates the point I was making earlier about hierarchies of oppression. What I'd like...
the reason why I'm saying that is that the reason why we're doing this is because the main narrative does not acknowledge all these histories. So until that happens, we still have to, and all means are changeable anyway.
It's a staging post, not an end.
It is. But I suppose my view is I'm still about the end destination. And look, I would love to see a Black History Month magazine feature a black gay man or woman, because it's the same thing, or indeed an Asian man or woman, or a Chinese Asian man, or disabled, because it's all the same thing. And I guess, and this is my personal view, I'm not against these history months, but the trouble is, when you get down to the Chinese History Month, you're talking to the Chinese community. Do you know what I mean? And I want these things to speak to everyone because it matters to everyone.
Yeah, but I think I have to challenge you on that. I think what's happening is people are using this History Month to engage wider audiences. So it happens in Black History Month anyway, because you have lots of audiences, black, white. I think it does actually. I think it does. It happens in schools everywhere, and I think other history months are doing the same thing as well. What is missing is something like the government actually embrace.
But we're trying to draw this, and you asked the question, and I want to deal with it before we close, which is, access to the law. Is based on your personal resource.
Yes.
I would argue that if we're going to have an assertive and an aggressive human rights approach, that also needs to mean access to law.
Yes.
And you cannot have, I still weep at the death of community law centres and legal aid.
Absolutely, I agree,
And, if you can't access the law, then you do not get justice. There's no point, right? There's literally no point. So I kind of think that when inclusive of this thing, people will say, "Well, Victor, we're under financial pressures, and we can't afford it." And I say, "What's the point in having a public sector and a service and taxation if basic access to human rights and law is denied because of your financial access?" And I think it's money well spent. And it's a value add. So I think you're right, and I think it's part of any campaign to reassert human rights.
However, like access to the justice system is like access to the NHS. You only access it when things have gone wrong or there's a problem. And actually, you have to absolutely take out and start revising, a bit like the National Trust started to do before they got. Well, they're still doing it, but under huge pressure not to. But, how do you take white supremacy out of education, out of history? How do you take that bias out and actually start giving people a clear understanding of the history of humanity, because otherwise you're constantly going to be, reinforcing the isms, but allowing people to pursue justice through.
I honestly, I think that the National Trust are brilliant, and I think that what they did is absolutely superb, and I'm glad to see they're still doing it, because what they're calmly doing, without fuss, is just telling the truth. History's about the truth, and I think they should keep doing it. I think we should encourage them to keep doing it,
absolutely.
and we should do it. It's like the stories that's why the work you do is so important. It's like, actually, the history of the NHS is the history of race. It's a history of racism. It's a history of black people. There would be no NHS without us. The facts are there. The evidence is there. There are people who might want to gainsay it. But they're basically trying to tell people that gravity doesn't exist. And they can do that. But I think we should tell these stories. It's very, very important. But I don't think that you can do that and allow any government to undermine fundamental human rights by not resourcing them, not talking about them, and not asserting them. And
I absolutely agree. And that was one of the reasons why I studied law in the first place, because it was all about representation, advocacy. I do it differently. I didn't practice as a lawyer, but I used the law through my campaign advocacy work. But I think you're quite right. And even the whole stuff around the Windrush scandal, a lot of Windrush victims don't have access to legal aid.
Correct.
To get lawyers to give them the best advice around compensation.
I think that's outrageous.
They get a really poor service, and that reinforces the trauma and the kind of, I use the expression sufferation, the sufferation of discrimination and hurt and loss.
Let's not. And I don't. I need to be clear in my own view that it's not about undermining these separate campaigns, but it is about bringing them together under an umbrella that says it's human rights, baby. These are human rights, and we need human rights in order for us to give you access to law, access to resource, and access to the means by which you can stand up for your rights.
Then it begs the question about the role of the Equality Human Rights Commission. Then
it does. It absolutely does.
Because it says on the tin.
It absolutely does.
And also perhaps about transparency and reporting, how we hold organisations, institutions, businesses to account for the cultural practices which lead to these, completely unjust outcomes.
You should not be funded to poison the waters in which my kids swim. I don't just mean that because of the rivers. I mean it politically. You should not be allowed to do that. You are damaging, undermining the economy by denying it the talent of black people through discrimination. You shouldn't be allowed to do it. That's why we need human rights.
Any other big ideas that could make a significant leap forward in our kind of ambition for a more equal and more equity across society?
So I mentioned right at the beginning that we have to wait for these epoch moments where there's a kind of moral ignition, and we must do something. People feel the guilt. They feel our pain. For a short while, they feel our pain. So the question is, how do we continue that conversation and not wait for another 5-10 years for people to feel the pain?
And how do we do that?
I don't know the answer to that, but we need to think of a way to have those ongoing conversations, dialogue, people's with lived experiences, those influencing policy and decision making.
I think it's. I think there's two things I'd say, and I'm not sure it's an answer, but I would say that let's not wait. I think we in the bits in between, what we have to do is connect those incidents to the everyday realities of the people watching this podcast. I think the reason why those incidents resonate is because it reminds people that it could be you too. And I think what we should be doing between those incidents, in a sense, rather than waiting, is telling stories, reminding people that this could be you. In America, I think it's interesting that post Floyd, the recent deaths that have occurred at the hands of the American government, really, through the ICE, have been white people. And if we'd have kept, in America, the narrative of George Floyd alive, and why that happened, which is fundamentally the state against the individual, white people might be a bit more cautious about electing people who are fundamentally racist. Right? That's those people, that were killed were white. They were trying to protect their rights. They were doing nothing. They were absolutely innocent. And yet their government stood up and called them terrorists.
Yes.
And that's because, in a way, we failed, and I mean that in a sort of, to keep the narrative alive and make it meaningful for people who thought it was an incident. And now it's over. Actually, it's not over. That incident happened because we allowed it, because we took our foot off the brake, because we didn't think it was about us. Oops, it is. We have to find ways of making the narrative understandable. It's about you.
But the problem is, I think there's only a handful of people, not handful. I'm using that keep that narrative alive. So we need to have more people to be involved to keep the narrative alive than having like the likes of us and other people that's well known and we're in each of the areas of intersectionality and equality, right? So you probably can identify probably 200, 300 people in the UK from LGBT, race, disability, the non-usual faces, suspects. But how do we then cascade that?
Yeah, but let's be clear. I think the same can be said for the really committed racists. There's not many of them, but they're very loud and they get a lot of attention.
You're quite right.
And I guess what I'd say is that what you're saying, and I know you've got to go when we conclude, but what I agree with, that it's not a you problem, as in us. We started talking about race, and it's interesting, we've ended up talking about human rights, and how it involves everybody. And in a way, what you're saying and what I interpret it as, it's not a you problem. You do amazing work in this area. I do my best.
Yeah.
It's a we problem.
It
is a we challenge. Like you need to be, that's you need to be utterly engaged, not because you're black or gay or both, but because it's your rights we're fighting for.
And it's the truth as well. And I think so many people are resistant to actually having the truth revealed to them for what it actually shows up around their own privilege. And there's got to be more that we can do, beyond the brilliant work that you do academically, to really build an evidence base that is, irrefutable in terms of the level of discrimination that different communities face. So, what are the chances of a black young person from a low income background achieving the governor of the Bank of England versus, other people in society? I think
interesting.
We have to hold institutions and organisations to account. So we ask all businesses, for example, to publish their annual accounts, and there are some new equalities duties that big businesses have to kind of. But what about a duty to justify inequities within your organisation? Or
well, oddly enough, this government, probably the first government to talk about doing, because that's what the organisations are doing it, the racial pay gap, both in government. Now, they're not making a big thing of it, but they are doing it, and the NHS is doing it. And it's another way of keeping that narrative about us, not just you. As in you, Patrick, and me, Victor, and you, Peter. And I think that's what we got to do. We got to keep telling the story between the events, so that when the events happen, they're connected to the narrative. People don't see it as a one-off; they see it as connected. It's systemic.
The Community Reinvestment Act in America was pretty revolutionary, wasn't it? Because it really showed how banks were making money from black communities, but not reinvesting back in, and that created a bit of, and it just feels as if we need a bit more light in some of these areas.
Similarly, when George Floyd happened, it showed up the fact that a lot of white policemen didn't live in black areas. They did the policing in black areas, they didn't live there. But look, Patrick, can I thank you?
Please.
I mean, you've been amazing as usual. We've known each other for a long time, and I've always admired you. I think you're amazing.
You've been amazing all through your career.
He's been.
It's a mutual. It is
not easy to do what you do.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people love you, and I'm one of them. Thanks for spending time with us.
No.
I think we got somewhere.
Yes.
What to do about. We got to what to do about. Thanks.
So Patrick was very good, wasn't he?
Right. Patrick was good value.
And he's got a great legacy of work that he has invested decades of his.
He's been doing this for as long as I've known him. I've known him for over 25 years.
Why isn't he better known?
Well, because of what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's a professor. He's run health systems. He's run mental health services. He has written probably at least 4 books. He is a lecturer. Guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that, but what he talks about, people find difficult, and you only have to look at the media to see that he's not the guy they're going to get on.
It's an awkward conversation. It's an inconvenient truth.
It's an inconvenient truth.
We've got Javan back.
Hi,
Thanks
Javan.
for having me again.
You
Thank
came and
you.
spoke about education and young people.
Young people.
And finally, we've managed to get him this side of the camera. We got JR.
I'm here.
So first of all, JR, can you tell us about this studio and salute briefly, because you are brilliant and allowing us the use of the studio. We are paying you, I think, but a mate's rate.
I think. Are we
Well, it's
paying?
mate's rate.
Oh, right. God, we are paying. Well, it's
So
got to make a
we
living.
said you would get definitely every opportunity to plug Salute Studio, which is partially draped in the flag of Palestine.
Come on.
Tell us about Salute.
And that top you're wearing, because every time I see you wearing something cool, and I just want to know.
Thank you. I've got this. This is TK Maxx. Finest. Finally.
Yeah, other discount clothing stores are
Available, yeah. They ain't paying.
Yeah, I am paying.
So Salute, we're a creative charity, been running 7 years. We provide free creative learning for young people from marginalized, disadvantaged backgrounds from the ages of 5 to 25 years old. The work is incredible, and I wouldn't normally say that, but it genuinely is. I reap the benefits of when you see a young person when we first meet them, and then they go through a journey and they go through the process of learning, and then some of them have gone into working alongside us, so paid work experience, and it's incredible to see their confidence grow, to see them grow as human beings and taking opportunities.
We've met some of them, haven't we? Because we had Blue
Scarf. Yeah.
And Gustavo.
They are
Isaiah,
cool, and they
yeah.
know their stuff, and they come on, and she's got a single out or something, and she's Blue Sky. She's bloody brilliant.
And they're testament to the work that we do. But they are they're the epitome of why we wake up every single day and come here. So here is the studio. The plan is to develop it into a multi-purpose photography media studio, and then just across over there, that camera might be able to see. We have the music studio that we will be taking over and having that as our music space.
Brilliant.
Plan is just to support more young people.
But the set's safe, isn't it? Our set.
Yeah.
Make sure.
Just checking in. Yeah, that's true. That's
right?
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So
And what I like about it is that you say what you do, and it's black lead, and it's hard to be what you can't see, and you are that thing. So I'm behind you. We got to get you. The Arts Council, if you're listening, you're watching. This is what you should be investing in.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
This is the stuff.
Preach.
As well as being black led, we're also very much youth led.
Yes.
So a lot of the activities that we have young people in there supporting the other learners. The young people are taking ownership of the social media and the content that we're making. But I think most importantly is all the programs that we deliver is co-designed with the young
That's
people.
what you want.
So that it's not me at 38 years old trying to come up with an idea.
trying to be cool. I've tried. I've given up. It's now a 3-piece. You know what I mean? There's no point.
I'm aiming to get to eventually.
I ain't gonna make it. You stay cool.
One of the things that we found difficult this week, I think, is pulling out some really credible solutions for how you tackle. I mean, even just hold back the tide of racism and phobias that are abounding in society at the moment. Any ideas on what we should be tackling first?
It gets really complicated really quickly, and it's hard to see the wood for the trees. And I think the solutions need to be simple again. You know, where we arrived at like, what happened to human rights and the dissipation of it. But it's what Patrick does, what I do, what we all try and do. It's hard work. It's hard work.
What does work? Any
Yeah,
thoughts?
I mean, it's something I think about a lot, I'm sure, as you can probably imagine.
I bet you do. As you're walking the streets of Clacton, I reckon
Yeah,
it was on your mind.
I mean, because to a point, values, British values, whatever we consider them to be, I think they're so disparate from what the next person considers them to be. And there's not really a collective conversation about what it is to be British, who we are as a people, our whole histories, the fact that some of us have come from different parts of the world, some of us have come from different class statuses, some of us have different access to things. And so maybe taking one step back before the solution is, I think we have to interrogate what it is to be British today and the associated dignities, I suppose. And then you can build a program. Indignities, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Then you can build a program out of it, and you can say, well, we want a policy around integration, so people who come here know that they're contributing to society, but they're recognised also as contributing to society. There's a kind of more stronger narrative and pushback against the rising racism and Islamophobia. I don't see any political leaders talking about some of the most essential things you can do to start to mitigate some of the prejudices that we're experiencing.
And what are
today.
those things? When you say some of the things we can do, what are those things?
Well, I think not leaning into some of the dog whistle kind of far right rhetoric.
Yeah.
I think that's always a good one. I think not accepting the quite ignorant assumptions around immigration or immigrants coming through.
I've got a quick question, and that is, you've both been successful in your careers, CEO of Recording Studio, Empire, all the rest of it. Javan, you know, parliamentary prospective candidate, you know, sign of hope within the Labour movement still, I think. Is the experience within community, like everyday life, just as, you know, you're growing up and stuff, do you encounter more aggressive or more overt forms of racism in that part of life, or do you feel it more as you move up the hierarchy of power?
That's really
is it
interesting.
Where is it more obvious and pervasive?
You go ahead, I'm curious.
That's really interesting.
I think there's so many layers, man. I feel like, so sitting in this seat, not literally this seat, but like working with Salute, I see it from different grades. So like, for example, I was over on the island a couple of months ago, and I was with like a senior person at Ballymore, having a great conversation. Loves the ideas of like what we're planning and moving forward. And as we walked out of here, he's gone one direction, I've gone another. And I said, I'll say hi to everyone in the office for me. And he's like, oh, we look forward to seeing you like a lot more, but I told everyone you said hello. In that very moment, and talking about like some real big plans and collaborations moving forward in the future, I then turned and saw this person walking on the island looking at their phone like that, which told me that they're lost. So I've approached them and been like, oh, you lost, you need some help. And they put their phone away, looked around and said, no, I don't need any help, and just carried on walking. So in one moment, somebody that's like super senior, probably, and I hope they don't mind me saying, they're Irish, right? So they might not have that much connection with like growing up and being around black people versus somebody that is maybe like looking for their friend, where their friend lives or so forth. Just could completely dismiss.
He was taking no help from a black man.
No help whatsoever. And I think that is testament to so much in life. I think sometimes you can go higher up where people don't genuinely care about, like, they're more interested in the work that you do and what you bring to the table. But in the same sense, we spoke with a funder last year, and I know all that they could see, sitting on camera, all they could see was this black guy with his hat turned around, telling them what the plan and what the vision is. And I have no shame. I had a conversation with master students in Cambridge University a couple of weeks ago about social innovation, and I turned up in a tracksuit, my hat turned backwards. I have no shame. I'll go everywhere, super confident on what I have to offer. But I know when I'm for a lot of the time when I walk into a room, I walk into a conversation, genuinely, if the person is maybe not at my level in my organization, like CEO level or maybe and higher, they're going to be taking me as a black man.
Yeah.
Dressed in a tracksuit, dressed in this. And it's not, I've always looked at it as, in that moment, it's not my loss, it's yours, you know, and it's a lack of education, which is the reason why you perceive everything to be what you see versus what it actually is.
Well, that's brilliant. And it's really weird. That's a really good question, because in my experience, racism still exists. I experience it pretty much every day. It gets more subtle.
Yeah.
So people think I'm a powerful person and titles and all that. But I've noticed it in these ways. One, ideas get taken but never accredited.
Yeah.
People find it often, and intelligent people find it hard to deal with their own racism, and they find it hard to work for a black person. And there's subtle ways of undermining and avoiding accountability. And I can tell you a number of times that people who I've worked with and work for me have found ways to undermine the mission, my mission, and go and work for competitors or undermine the team, or they don't even know they're doing it, but underneath it, that they really struggle to accept that a black person can have an idea, that can accept it kind of intellectually, but emotionally, like, I just can't. And you see them, they leave and they go and work for a white leader or whatever, and they thrive. Now, you could argue, well, you're just a bad manager, Victor. But I've been doing this for a long time, and I've turned organizations around. So it can't just be it's that actually some white people find it really hard to be allies and work. So it's not the case that the higher you go up, the easier it gets. In fact, in some ways, it's harder because people hide their racism, and they find, so honestly, some of the stories, we'll have to have a chat about, because some of the stories, it's so subtle, but it's there. Right. And some of the work of Professor David Williams on this is really clear. I'm starting to write a book, actually, about leadership in this regard. But honestly, you'll know what I mean. It's certainly in politics.
I'm interested in your experience of going through an elite education organisation, and even, politics has become less diverse, I think, in terms of people coming from your sort of background into it. And what was worse?
For me, I find it's quite interesting. You can see how people look at you before you've opened your mouth. And then the moment I open my mouth, I do feel as though some people are disarmed a bit. Maybe because I can interact.
You speak the Queen's English beautifully.
Reassurance.
Beautifully.
Oh, listen,
he ain't talking street. He ain't urban.
Well, I don't know, but it's quite funny to me to sometimes just see these faces completely drop, because they're seeing a young black guy in his 20s with braids in his hair or whatever. And sometimes, I mean, like you, I rolled around in my tracksuits, my Air Forces, whatever. And then to be able to hold a conversation in a way that they would not have expected me to is always a source of enjoyment for me.
I get exactly the same. Sometimes I've called it out. I've been in meetings with ministers. We all know this, don't you? You've been in meetings with someone, and you say something, and a white person says exactly the same thing, sometimes in exactly the same way 10 minutes later, and it's the God's own truth.
Absolutely.
It's like the God's own truth. And sometimes you point it out. Sometimes you're just like, you know what? I want to get the thing done. And that happens to me all the time.
And I think
it's
that's
standard.
where the exhaustion part of the kind of discrimination and racism comes in, is because, you're constantly having to assert yourself in every room you go into. And sometimes I wonder whether it's become more subtle or whether you just become more acquainted with it. And so it becomes less abrasive. Do you know what I mean?
It's interesting, because I think, again, the opposite happens. So because I am who I am, I'm 6 foot, you're tall guys, the opposite happens. So I had an exchange with somebody recently who accused me of having the wrong attitude, didn't like my attitude. Now, I was talking to them calmly, but I didn't agree with them. Now,
get in line.
It gets used, so people assume, because I've got titles, I'm powerful, and so what happens is they attack. I can't, you know, like
they try and discredit you almost.
Yeah, like asserting myself is an aggressive act.
Yeah.
Being right is I've got the wrong attitude. Having knowledge is being big-headed or you know throwing my weight around.
Automatic.
Applying my authority is certainly playing. So there's a double. I'm thinking all the time about what tools to use in what context to get the outcome that I need, and it's a constant play, and you know it's exhausting. And recently I've realised that the older I get, the more time I need to recover from just doing my work, because it is exhausting.
Yeah.
You know, my mum's Jamaican. She moved here in 1969. She was 11 years old. Her first day in school, she got called a gollywog.
Yeah.
She didn't even know what a gollywog was. And so she went home, spoke to her mum, and her mum explained it to her. In 96, I was in school, and my friend, who I thought was my friend, ended up told me to get back on the banana boat. And I didn't know what the banana boat was, if I'm being honest. But I knew he was trying to be disrespectful, but from the tone. So I went home and I told my mum, and my mum said to me, she explained what it was. So I was like, oh, cool, I'll go into school the next day and kick his ass. And she said to me, like, no, don't be mad at him, because he won't know what it means either. Like, it comes from his parents. The next day I went in and he said it again. And I said to him, like, it's cool, don't worry, I know it ain't. Just relaying what my mum said to me, I came up with it. And we ended up actually becoming like best friends. I ended up going to play for his football team that his dad had to take me to. And I ended up being like the number one striker there. So he had to end up loving me. Yeah. But a couple of weeks ago, I went for some food with another childhood friend. And he said to me, if black people, it's crazy, if black people stop telling their children about racism, then they might not grow up. They wouldn't grow up with a chip on their shoulder.
I hear this a lot.
So I explained
chip
to
on
him
your shoulder.
From 69 to 96 to recently, one of our young people going through something, and even from me walking through here and still receiving it. At what point do we change and start having a conversation? Because if I'm a little bit older and I walk into a room and my mum's never told me about racism and anything that we've gone through, I walk into a room and I'm receiving it. I wouldn't even know it's going over my head.
It's a really interesting one. I don't know whether it's better to know or not know. I think it's better to know.
Better to know.
Because it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah, better the devil.
That way you're not confused and you know what the tools are and you have some choices as to how you act or react. I think it's better to know. I think it's convenient to assume that it's not necessary to know, particularly if you happen not to be.
I think that's also,
black.
to a point, a bit of a coping strategy for a lot of people is when any experience is so visceral on a daily basis, and when you know it's because of who you are, it's hard to reconcile with. And I think to a point
makes sense.
Had to deal with some of that to a point, because
I bet you did.
You don't want to really think that someone doesn't like you for your skin color, because it's just quite a ridiculous thing. But when you actually do, I don't know, it breaks your character to a point. Yeah, it's so shocking. And you realize how, I don't know, wedded it is to our institutions and our way of being and our thinking.
Did you experience much overt racism when you were out canvassing in Clacton?
In Clacton, yeah, there were challenges. I mean, for as many like prejudicial people you come across, you're always going to come across really lovely people. And I would say 95% of people I came across were obviously lovely, but the 5%, they really stick with you. That's the problem. And you can always remember when someone says, "Go back home."
More.
Where are you from? Go back home. Calling you this word, that word, words that I genuinely, a bit like you, didn't realize that people still use in this country.
It is incredible. Not only do people still use it, I find that one of the myths and one of the about the working class versus middle class, I've experienced more welcome in working class areas from people who were supposed to be racist, at least that's how the middle class media tells you, than I have from middle class people who don't use the words,
but have the attitude.
You know, I think that's partly to do with, I think that's, so I was brought up in a very kind of white working class community, and it was a community, and 50% or 40% of the people going to my school were from diverse backgrounds. And so I felt that was my community. Whereas I think if you are middle class, you tend to move to more affluent areas. Your life becomes more exposed to diversity, and therefore you attach prejudice to the notion of what people are like, rather than being able to draw on that direct experience.
I think you're right. It's interesting because I live in an aspirational middle class area, and when I was a housing officer, not far from here actually, there were people whose aspiration was to get out of here because it was too black, to move to where I now live.
Really, yeah.
And when I was even younger, I remember people taking the 10 quid to move to Australia.
In 10 shillings then.
No, 10 shillings. 10 farthings. Stop it. To move to Australia or going to South Africa. And of course, if your kids hear that conversation, they immediately assume, well, hang on a minute, if I'm living with black people, I need to aspire to live with white people.
Yeah.
And when you get to live with white people and your parents tell you the story, you think, well, I'm moving up.
Also the aspiration around private education, right, which you get to see a lot, I'm assuming in Cambridge and Oxford. Those people get exposed to a very, very fraction of society, a small fragment of society. And you just don't, feel comfortable necessarily. I've seen in my own professional networks, people that have certain privilege, almost their discomfort or about being around black people, they don't know how to be around black people. You can see their hesitancy and they don't mean to be racist. But
well, I actually think that's, I want to say something that might be controversial. The first is that I think that's normal. I think most people, we're hardwired to be suspicious of people that we don't know. The difference is that not only is it normal, but it's the difference between your amygdala and your sort of prefrontal cortex. The idea that you can get over that through reason, right?
Yeah.
I think it's normal, and I think I say this to people. It's like, I'm only black, like, get over it, okay? But the question becomes one of shame, and then not the pain of learning.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And if somebody comes along and says, well, you don't have to learn. You can be ignorant, and that's cool. It's much easier to go, well, I'm in the majority.
Well, yeah.
I'll just go with those people. I don't have to learn. And I'm quite sympathetic in some ways to people. It's not their fault they've been brought up in that way.
No.
It's not their fault. And I'm open to supporting in some ways.
And this is it.
What I'm not open to is denial.
I think one of the things
Does that make
about
sense?
this whole racism conversation is we almost need to develop the tools also to be able to speak to others about racism, not just those who experience it, but those who unintentionally perpetuate it. Exactly.
Praxis, I don't know, the refugee organisation sent me something yesterday, actually, in my inbox, which was a guide to how to engage racists.
I think that is...
what language to use, how you build trust in a relationship that you're going to challenge.
Some people
more in
wouldn't...
sorrow than in anger, almost.
Well, yeah, I mean, some people wouldn't recognise themselves to be racist as well. And that's also, to a point, okay. It's hard. I mean, if a country's been built and curated from 400 years of going around the world and premising a particular ethnic group above everyone else, it's hard to see how within the space of a generation or two it's going to disappear. But you do need to have the kind of slow, soft skills to actually meet people where they are and say, well, we are all human beings. And as you say, I'm only black.
You've got to be honest. I try and do that. I try and be helpful. I'm a human. I meet other humans. You meet them where they are and all that. But sometimes it feels like trying to walk across Lake Windermere, and I'm like, I can't be. It's like,
it's
you
exhausting.
do you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've got work to do. I've got to be. And it's what F. Scott Fitzgerald said. Some people don't know they're fascists, and I think some people don't know they're racist. They just don't know.
They don't know.
Do you feel like it's not well, like racism, right? It's taught. It's a learned thing, but
It is learned.
No baby comes out racist.
But anti-racism isn't really taught, So racism is taught.
Yeah, but how do you
and
unlearn it?
anti-racism isn't taught.
So shouldn't there be something from as early as possible? Because if I was in primary school going through, and my what I thought was my friend at the time saying to get back on your banana boat. Shouldn't there be the counter in education?
Correct.
And the study of racism and behaviors, so that
history. Just teach people history.
But also just I think the history is good, but the present, and helping them to understand,
exposing how prejudice manifests, actually, understanding
and how it affects people.
It's not just about calling people words that you're not allowed to use. It's much more subtle than that, and that's what we need to get into, because that's where the power is.
It was really interesting. I was in New Zealand before Christmas, and New Zealand was voted in quite an extreme right government, and this government wanted to abolish the teaching of Maori in all schools. And the schools responded by mounting a campaign, getting the schools to sign a petition to say, we're going to carry on teaching. I think they're up to about 96% now of all schools are going, actually, we're going to teach Maori. One of the reasons why they teach Maori is just that. If you teach the language, then you're also teaching the philosophy, the attitudes, the approaches, 100%. And it's hard for kids to be racist if they've been taught
have an
the language.
Yeah.
I think there's something about that, like teaching people how to be good human beings.
That's it.
Is because we do teach them to be bad human beings. The kid who said that was taught to say it.
Yeah, of course. It's interesting as well, like in America, they don't teach the biggest part of one of the biggest parts of their history, or if not the biggest part. They don't teach slavery.
No, they don't. No. Well, they certainly don't do now. They certainly don't.
No, all of that. They don't really go into a great deal of detail into even the civil rights movement, you know?
No, you have to find that out yourself.
Yeah, and it's, I think also in education, relating back to that, we've seen, the national curriculum be kind of eroded and displaced by academies that can teach creationism instead and all sorts of other stuff, which just kind of pollutes.
I don't even go there. The idea.
I tell you where we need to go to.
I know where we need to go.
Oh, where do we need to go to?
My stomach's starting to rumble.
Oh, is it?
I feel a break, and I know what that means.
Oh, what does it mean?
It means Sarah burns
cakes. Come on,
in,
Sarah. What have we got? Come on,
Come
you can take my
on
seat. I'm going to.
Where are you going?
I'm going to go and sit here with the boys.
All right, okay. How are you
This
going
is
to
the
do
youngsters'
that?
corner.
There's a seat for two. Oh, look, very
there
clever.
you go.
I'm
What have we
left
got,
with the
Sarah?
old boy. I'm left with the old boy.
Chocolate brownies.
Oh my God! Look at the state of that.
Wow.
And is that an intentional link up with our subject matter? Sorry.
Racist.
Yeah, just rinse.
Suddenly.
It's funny though.
Sarah, and we're not being misogynistic, we should say that Sarah's always been an incredible creator of cakes that we have
is
loved for many
absolutely true.
years.
That is true.
And we thought she
And
should
while
be
we're
famous.
doing it, we always ask Sarah what she thinks of the conversation because.
Yep. What do you think?
Yes, please.
I totally agree with what JR just said then. If I pass that over to you.
Thank you.
When you see young children in a nursery playing, they don't care what the other person they're playing with looks like.
Oh my God.
So what point does it change that they're suddenly concerned about who it is they're playing with? It has to come from the parents. 100% has to come from parents.
And therefore we have to do the education.
Yeah. And stop
have to.
doing history just about kings and queens.
Well, it's a good name.
Those are delicious.
Right. Sarah burns cakes as a brand.
It works.
I think it's nice. Burns cakes.
Probably we're most enthusiastic I've seen our guests.
I think the cool part about it is the burns.
The burns.
The burns is a cool part about it
Exactly.
because it's burns signifies cooking also. Right?
Do you make bread? Burns bread would be a good one.
I do. I love making sourdough.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm one of those.
Sarah burns his sourdough. That sounds
Sarah
good.
burns sourdough.
Sarah
Yeah,
burns
just
which
sourdough.
Sarah
I
bread.
do often
Cake, sourdough.
do because I often forget it's in the oven.
One final thought. Do you think we've got any chance of launching a new boy band?
What do
Maybe
you
and
think?
Victor. I don't know whether.
No.
Victor will be the lead.
Not a
that'd
chance.
be you. Yeah.
Not a chance. It just it's like it's a thorn between two roses. And it's like there's just
Be a
not
backing dancer.
not a chance, mate. It's like no way. These guys are the future. Handsome was fucking really smart, and then you.
Wow.
Sorry. And
Wow.
me.
Experience what it's like to be a minority.
That's not going to happen.
Thankfully, it's only for 10 minutes.
Well,
Right.
That's true.
Well, thank you, sir, for those delicious brownies. We will all be
Thank you.
Indeed.
taking
Thank
at least
you.
one home with us,
Yes.
if that's all right.
Indeed.
And I think pizza's soon to be delivered.
It's
When is it going?
Oh, is it already
It's
here?
here, yeah.
Oh, it's going.
Let's go. Thanks, everybody. Cut. Pizza time.